Ulrike Scheuermann is joining me from Berlin, Germany, where she's a psychologist for 25 years and a best-selling author to guide people to develop better and healthier relationships with yourself and others. Ulrike is a certified master practitioner in logosynthesis and offers logosynthesis practitioner training in Berlin and as a hybrid training format online for many years. So thank you for joining me, Ulrike.
Yes, thank you very much as well, Cathy.
I'm looking forward to this. So yeah, to start, can you tell us how you were introduced to logosynthesis and what made you curious to learn about this model?
Yes, I got to know to logosynthesis actually 16 years ago. I counted today again. And
Wow.
that was here in Berlin. And I got to know to Willem Lammers, who was a friend of my mother-in-law at that time. And I relied to her enthusiastic stories. So I wanted to get to know to him and to this method. And right in the seminar, I signed up for a session with Willem, and I experienced firsthand how a frightening situation with my young son in a car traffic, which was very emotionally for me for quite a long time, was completely relaxed after one process with logosynthesis. And that was so impressive for me that I started to get more into it.
Wow. Yeah, so something that has kind of been with you for a long time, and then all of a sudden it's not an issue anymore.
Yes, and was very good for working at this because it was only one thing. Now, I
Right.
experienced this in the traffic and was quite a bit, yeah, it was dangerous for my son, but nothing happened. So it was only this one thing and not a whole story of my life. It
Right.
was good for resolving it in one session.
Yeah, because with logosynthesis, we do work kind of issue by issue, layer by layer, don't we? So yeah. So can you describe what types of struggles people are dealing with that come to you for support and what results they notice when using the model?
Yes, as I work as a therapist and coach and trainer, and I have two main topics. The one is I help both since 25 years. I help nonfiction authors and scientists and anyone who writes professionally to write inspired and publish successfully. That's what I do for myself as well. I write books and I help others with this. And there are always writer's blocks, especially in big projects, writing projects. And this is an area where I work a lot with logosynthesis, and there are very successful developments because many people who have problems or writer's blocks, these started in the childhood at school, because you learn writing at school,
Right.
and often there are teachers, perhaps in Germany it's like that. They correct very strict, and then these children they just write something and they don't look for if it's right, and then comes the teacher and says, no, this is wrong and that's the wrong rule, and then they get frustrated, and this can last over years or for the whole life. And then it's a good possibility to work with logosynthesis. That's the one topic. And the second area concerns, in general, people who want to develop personally and are in situations of change. Further, before I worked 10 years in a crisis counseling. And yes, it's very different issues, and I don't divide from professional and private issues. It belongs together anyway. So It's about physical problems, coping with illness, professional development, conflicts with colleagues, superiors, or in private relationships, and everything down to the different kinds of relationship problems. That's the center,
Yeah.
I would say.
That whole person perspective, isn't it? Because quite often people come with one issue and they think, oh, this is my issue. And it really has, that overlap from professional to personal, or personal to professional. And so the nice thing I find about logosynthesis is it allows you just to be with what's actually the issue in the moment, and get to the root of it, as opposed to rationally explaining it and trying to fix it, right? So
Yes, that's and we both know, no? We sometimes land somewhere totally different than where we started.
yeah, exactly. And I know I've used logosynthesis in my writing, and I don't think I would have been able to write a book without being able to resolve some of the blocks around writing, like to be able to put a book out there, and because some of it just seemed a little too heavy, and then working with the specific issue that was bugging me, that I've been able to just let it go, and then it doesn't feel like an issue anymore. And a big piece for me was, what if I make a mistake when I put it out there? and that can be very limiting, right? Like if something's wrong with it, what do you do? And at the end of the day, things happen and you can fix it. There are solutions. So yeah.
Yes, there are many possibilities to work with logosynthesis to resolve the own blocks for writer's blocks, for example. Yes.
Yeah.
Was the same with me. I mostly I imagined overcritical readers. They burdened me, and then I imagined this, and then I thought I have to work more and more, and then it became stressful. And this is a great possibility to work with logosynthesis and resolve these pictures of overcritical readers.
Yeah, because my experience is that readers are much more supportive than I ever imagined they would be, right? So it's that imagination gets us carried away, as opposed to what the reality is, because the reality isn't anywhere near that in many times, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Actually, I would say I only experience friendly and interested readers.
Awesome. So speaking of that, you're a best-selling author, so congratulations with that. And you write about self-care, self-love, and social connections. So can you tell us what inspired you to write on this topic, and then how logosynthesis inspires and guides this?
Yes. For me, self-care and social connections are two sides of the same coin. And the relationship with myself and the relationship with others, for me, it's one. And I think for everybody, if we look closer to it, it's one. And that's my theme. That's what I write about. And I wrote another book after self-care. I wrote a book about self-love. I don't know if it's a common word in English, but in German, self-love is very common. And after this, it was the logical step to write the book about social connections, about the connection or the relationship to others. I think this book about social connections is my life's work, and it is completely science-based. And because I imagined when I, as a psychologist, say in a book, social connections are the most important in life for all of us, then everybody says, oh, yeah, she's a psychologist. Of course, she mentions this. I need to prove it with science, with studies, and with data. And this is very easy possible because if you start reading studies, it's full of studies, and there are huge studies, meta studies, and long-term studies. The longest is over 80 years. It's very famous, the Harvard study. I think you know
Yes. Yeah.
as well. And the result is good relationships are the most important for a good life, for physical life and for emotional or mental health. And this is not so well known, perhaps only in the German-speaking countries, but it's rather like social connections. Yes, everybody says, yes, of course, this is important, but in the everyday life, the work, the success, money, and so on, this is more important. But at least
I remember once at work we did a little exercise just to say, you know, what's the most important to you. But then and of course for me came back family, but then you kind of look at the amount of time you spend with your family versus your work, and there was a disconnect there, right? So, you know, it didn't always match up as to how you spent your time or where your energy was focused or who you prioritized at any one point in time, right?
Yes, and we need, that's something I really learned from reading all these studies. We have to reserve more time, social time, for our connections, because time is one of the most important factors for closeness in relationship. The more time you spend with someone, the closer the person gets. It's getting more into closer relationships. Of course, there are other things you have to do something. It gets closer, but time is a very important factor. And so very basic, we have to reserve more time for our connections. And if we want to have a fulfilled and healthy life, and our social contacts are number one for a healthy long life. That's the result of the studies.
So then how does logosynthesis come into this? If you know, if we know that social connections and social contacts are important, and where do you see logosynthesis fitting into this important work of strengthening social connections and strengthening social relationships?
Yes. My suppose, and the suppose of also of scientists, is because the big question is why do people underestimate the power of connections, social connections? And the idea is that many people underestimate it because social relationships are difficult or they can become difficult. And so it's easier to eat healthy, which is of course very important as well. To eat healthy, to make exercises and sports, it's easier because there are easy rules. And connections, social relationships don't have easy rules. So sometimes it hurts. And there are many strong emotions they all appear in relationships. So that's where logosynthesis comes in, because with the help of logosynthesis, it's it's quite easy to relax relationships, because emotions are resolved, blocks, and then there starts to we can meet other people in a more emotionally relaxed and unbiased and inwardly free way. And of course, the other person notices this as well and can open up to me in a correspondingly more relaxed way. And this has many benefits. It makes clarification. Also, we can get closer, or it's also easier possible to divide, or more. Sometimes there is more separation important, and also this is much easier. So it's a big help to relax and clear relationships.
Yeah, because I think sometimes what happens in well, for me, what I notice in relationships is you end up reacting to the other person. And if someone that's important in your life, it's someone that you're close to, those reactive patterns, you get stuck in them and you kind of repeat it over and over again. And it's just the way things are. And for me, it really wasn't until I was introduced to logosynthesis, because I've tried a lot of personal care and self-help and all of that, right? Like to shift reactive behavior, I guess would be the best word to describe it. But I hadn't been able to shift it. And for me, logosynthesis allows me to kind of recognize what it is that's bugging me about the other person and follow a really specific, repeatable process to shift that. And you know, it's impacted in family, it's impacted in friends and work relationships. And you know, sometimes we say in logosynthesis, it allows us to be in more of an adult state as opposed to reacting, you know, to, you know, getting in that childish phase or something, right? Like we're actually acting in the present instead of reacting to things that we can't really see or detect. Yeah.
Yes, and I would say it's exactly how you said it just now. And it's so often we are together, we see other people as if there were early persons from childhood. No, we react to someone as if it was the mother or the father or the sister.
Mm-hmm.
And if we do this, we are in a childish state, and then we can't see the real person, and that's such a pity. It's we can't see the real person because there's something in front of. And I experience this very often, how this, whatever you call it, curtain or paper or something, where you only look through half, it disappears, and then I can see the person different. And I experience this very often with clients in my work. They say afterwards they feel more compassionate with the other person, because there is no anger anymore or fear, and then they can understand and feel more with the other person and understand why the other person behaves like she or he does.
Yeah, and it takes us out of trying to change the other person, because quite often that happens, right? There's nothing wrong with me, it's the other person, and so I have to do something to change them. And so this is, I keep saying, you know, it's changing my reaction to the other person. And then when I change how I react to the other person, the other person is more apt to just be themselves, right? And not react to me. And so sometimes, like I know in relationships, it's very easy to trigger something in someone else, or someone else triggers something in me. And it's hard to determine who starts it, but it quite quickly escalates.
Yeah,
And then we're like, oh, how did we get here? right? And you don't even know, like, it might have just been a look, or it might have been, yeah, it might have been a choice of words, or but it's something that happened that all of a sudden, one reaction triggers another reaction, and it just kind of escalates, and it's sometimes hard to get out of, right?
Mm, mhm. Yes, and it's not always possible alone.
Right.
Especially everything which has to do with relationships goes very often very deep, and there are strong feelings, emotions, and then it might be better to have someone who guides and not do everything alone, because both is possible with logosynthesis, but self-coaching sometimes it's not the best way to do it without a guide.
Yeah, and I think you make a really good point there, because the guide can see it from a different perspective than what you're feeling, right? And so we end up, when we're doing the self-coaching piece, you can follow the process, but to identify those triggers, someone that's trained in logosynthesis can really help to guide that process to actually get to what is triggering the reaction, right? As opposed to getting all jumbled up in the emotion of it all.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I said it's for me, social connections, and I come from a large family. I've got 7 siblings and lots of in-laws and nieces and nephews, and when my mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, I live 400 kilometers from where my parents are,
Mhm.
and my mom had recently passed away, but it was, yeah, Alzheimer's is a long journey, right? And one of the things that I noticed with the logosynthesis is that it really allowed me to shift my priorities. So for years, I was so focused on work and volunteer and busy in my community, and I didn't necessarily have to give everything up to go spend time with my parents, but I did notice that I had more time available that I could go when I was needed. And so when you speak of the time aspect, right? I look back and I think, what would have been different if I didn't have logosynthesis? And I think with a lot of certainty that I would still be in that really busy phase of having to work, and I would have probably gone up, but everybody would have known how busy I was and how much of an inconvenience it was to leave everything to go and spend time. And so when I went to spend time, I could really enjoy that time, as opposed to um, having to think about all the other things that had to be done and stuff. So I felt a much stronger connection with my mom going through that process, and that was very special for me. So, I contribute a lot of that to the work with logosynthesis. So yeah.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Yes, and this is also, it has to do with the work and your time, but it counts for the relationship again. Yeah. Mhm, mhm.
Yeah, and it's that interface, like, it isn't just professional and personal, right? But it's a little bit for me was noticing what was showing up, and you don't get to pick the timing, but you notice your reaction as to what's going on. And yeah, I think for me, a piece of it is just being able to settle into the relationship a little bit more, as opposed to
Mhm.
powering through everything, right? And having to, yeah. And I think for everybody it's different, and different connections in that. But being able to notice where I'm reacting was very helpful for me.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. So what in your book with the social connections, what types of social connections do you look at, and or it's a general
Yes, it's perhaps it's that's somehow special because I don't focus on partnership or friendship or colleagues, because it's the whole social net which makes the difference. And if we have some, it's enough two, or better two than one, two or three or four or five close relationships, very stable and close relationships. This is ideal. If there is more than one, and there's a magic number is 5 or 3 to 5. So perhaps someone has a partner and 2 best friends and 1 or 2 children, and that are 5, and there is not so much more possibility. The other people, then they are a bit further. Now they are in a bigger circle around, but the very close is 1 to 2 to 5. And the studies show, also the social network science shows that this number is everywhere in the world. It's the same, 3 to 5 people.
So kind of that nuclear family
Yes,
unit.
yes, and if you have perhaps young children and a husband, there is not, we all know this from ourselves or from others, there is not so much time for many friends. And it's okay. It shouldn't be stress. But at least it's better to have, of course, it's good to have one person, but better also in a partnership if there's at least one friend or one other person outside. And then, yeah, then come the bigger circles with 15 and then 50 and up to 150 people. That's a number about, it's a number where most social networks are organized, and where we can know the relationships under each other and have a have a direct contact. And after, behind 150 people, it gets a bit more. Then we know the names, we know the pictures of the people, but we are not in direct contact anymore. But 150 is quite a lot. And there is everything inside. Yes, friends, family, partner, colleagues, neighborhood, or as you told, people in the community where someone engages. Everything can be in there. And also important for the for feeling connected are the people with whom you never are closer than for a few sentences, like neighbors you say hello to and talk for 1 or 2 or 5 minutes, and it never gets more, but it can be so helpful to change these words and a few sentences with them, because it strengthens the feeling of being connected with others. So this is often underestimated as well. Many people
So those
think
walks in the
neighbors
community.
not important,
Yeah.
but they are very important to feel connected, and for people who are very who feel lonely. It can be a huge help if someone says, "Hello, how are you?" And perhaps it's the only contact someone has during the day, and it can be a big help. And we don't know how other people feel, and many people feel very lonely.
And so the social media side of it, so, there's the in-person, to see these people in person. But then, what about FaceTime and sort of all our friends on social media? How does that give that same sense of connection?
Yes, there's also many studies, and it's most helpful. It's if you have relationships you also see directly. It helps you to keep contact with
Yeah.
them, and then on the other hand, there are other people you will never in your life see. How's it called in person?
In person, yeah.
You will never see them in person. And it comes in again, this issue with the time, because being on Facebook or wherever, it takes a lot of time and you don't really realize, and then there are 2 or 3 hours gone. And this is very precious social time. So it's better invested if you use these 3 hours to meet someone in person. That's a disadvantage of social media. It steals away social times we could use better for meeting someone in person.
Yeah, I can see that as far as, and it's so convenient to stay home and just get on social media as opposed to, as at least here in Canada, everywhere we go, we have to drive, or, it's not so easy to around to connect with, you have to plan a little bit more. And, but yeah, I always enjoy the spontaneous connections too. So that, like going for a walk in the neighborhood and seeing whoever you see, right? So kind of to your point, those casual hellos, and yeah.
Yes, and also studies, laughing is very de-stressful. Of course, laughing is very healthy, and therefore it's the best if 4 people meet, not only 2, but about 4, because I think we know this. We are laughing more if we are more than 2. Now we are laughing as well, but sometimes if 2 people meet, it's serious talking about something, and 3 or 4 or 5 people, they laugh more. So you can meet a little group of people, and sometimes you get even more benefits.
So is there a breakdown on what the kind of the perfect or the desired size of group should be for, like, is there like a one-on-one should be such percentage of your relationships, and small groups should be?
No,
No.
this is not,
Yeah.
it's difficult
It's
to
just, yeah.
say that, because it depends if you're more introvert or extrovert, and what you like, or what is possible. Yeah.
And so we kind of talked like the one-on-one, how logosynthesis supports the social connections. What about like in kind of the larger groups in that? Is there anything that comes to mind for you as far as, how logosynthesis can support this work?
Yes, I think in larger groups, many people, perhaps in Germany more than in other countries. I'm not sure, but in Germany, people count it. One of the biggest fears is to speak in front of a big group of people. So
That's here too, I think. Yes.
it's the same. Okay. Yeah. And that's one of the big problems. If the group is bigger, many people are afraid to say something, because many eyes are looking on them and they get afraid. And it's a big stress for many people. I have many people who come, or again and again, people who come for coaching, and with this fear, talking in front of a bigger group or audience.
Mhm.
I think
Yeah, and
this
one of the, and yeah, and logosynthesis, we know, certainly helps to resolve those blocks so that the issues fall away, right? And I think one of the other things that there's a lot of talk here in Canada and everywhere is the whole diversity and inclusion. And so how do people feel included? And especially when we bring really diverse groups together. And again, if I think of my family, we all kind of think the same and act the same, and you know, we can pretty much anticipate how the other is going to act on something. But when you bring in a diverse group and you bring in in-laws and that, they think and act differently. And so, you know, sometimes, and especially in a work environment, that's not always comfortable. And we don't always know what it is that's causing our discomfort. But again, a lot of times it's, you know, it's a previous experience, or it's some sort of interject that influences our reactions. And so I think logosynthesis again there can really help people to resolve those blocks so that they can feel more connected.
Yes. Yes. And being excluded and all this group dynamic which is happening around this topic, it's one of the it's one, perhaps it is the most painful experience, because it's you can also measure it in the brain. It's this hurt or this pain, if someone feels excluded, is in the same area where physical pain is experienced. It's actually in the brain, it's the same. If the emotional pain and the physical pain is in the same area. So it's quite obvious that this pain is very strong and very real. And I think in the same way as you said, there is one part of it is what we experienced with being excluded, and this is very helpful to work with logosynthesis. And then there can a lot of fear or anxiety can go. We can let go when we resolve these blocks. And another part is real. It's a realistic fear as well, because when we are excluded, we have many disadvantages. It can get more dangerous for us, perhaps now less dangerous than a few million years ago, but at that time it was it meant the person would die if it's excluded from the group, from the family or the group they are together.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think a lot of that, you know, we end up creating diverse work environments, and we end up, you know, bringing a lot of diverse people together with the aim of creating a better outcome. And yet, unless we have a model to help resolve some of that natural reactionary response, it's very challenging to work in. And I just know, working in diverse work environments, it's like, when you work with people that think and act like you do, it can be pretty efficient, right? But then you bring in people with different ideas of what work involves and how to go about it. It can get quite stressful, and that's again when, you know, people trigger each other, and it quickly escalates, and it's not overly beneficial to form strong social connections either, right? It can be quite divisive, and so being able to resolve some of those reactive patterns, to me, is hugely important. And the question always is, you know, who has to do the work? Is it me or them, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
But
We
I'm
can
always told it is my work to do.
yeah, we can only do our part of the work.
And yet, if I do my part of the work and it doesn't bother me anymore, then that's very beneficial for me. So,
And for
yeah.
the other person as well.
Yes. Yeah. So a lot of people, I was just going to say, a lot of people do invest a lot in self-care and they still struggle to see the desired changes that they are looking for. And then there's another group of people that don't really invest in self-care because they're fine as they are. So how do you inspire people to make shifts to support their own well-being?
Yes, I think what works very well to motivate or to inspire is to link self-care with health. This is a good argument because health is the most important satisfaction factor for people. That's also science-based. That means health is very important for everyone. And many people say self-care, yeah, okay. If I have enough time, I do some self-care. But if there is this link to health, because self-care and self-love is important to lower the stress level. And stress is the most important danger of getting ill. That's what the World Health Organization says. And then there is a link between self-care, where at first many people say it's peanuts, it's not important, it's not the real life or something like that, or I have no time to care for myself. But if it's linked to health, it gets another. It's a stronger argument. That's what I experience.
Yeah, and for me, when I was introduced to logosynthesis, like, wait a minute here, I didn't realize this, that these mental images that we have and these sensory perceptions are triggering stress responses. And we can eliminate these mental images. So it's almost to me like, we don't live with a splinter in our finger. We take the splinter out and then our body can heal. And yet we have all these mental images that we walk around with that are triggering our stress responses. And we walk around with them. And logosynthesis offers such a efficient and beautiful way to eliminate them or shift them so that they're not triggering that stress response. So I just think it is a wonderful, healthy lifestyle practice to be able, like, to get in the routine of self-care, because you can notice the results, and the results are sustained. Like, once you shift that mental image, it doesn't come back and keep triggering. So yeah, to me, I sometimes think of it as a splinter, like, just remove it, and it can be more complicated because we have so many mental images and experiences that can affect how we show up, and we don't have to eliminate everything, but we can pay attention to what's bothering us and causing us to trigger stress responses so that we can feel healthier. Yeah.
Yes.
It's interesting. So yeah, I'm just thinking, like, if you have one message, a key message you would like to leave people. I'm thinking we should probably wrap up soon, but if there's a key message that you have for people, what would that be?
Well, I would say logosynthesis is something like an all-rounder to feel better and to live better. And I work over 25 years as a psychologist, and of course I learned and did a lot of things to go on learning, but it's still the same, that logosynthesis is my favorite method or system to help people, and to help them, and to come very fast and very sustainable to the center and resolve everything what's in the way, so that people can live their mission. And I think it's incredible helpful, and I think we both hope that or do and work for it, that more and more people get to know to this.
Yeah, because I think there's an awareness piece, right? Like, I think if we don't know what's happening and how to resolve it, that's one thing. It's another thing if we do have a solution and people are aware of it, then they have an ability to choose and to get support and to live a better life, right? So I don't think people necessarily choose to suffer or to live an unhealthy lifestyle, but and a lot of people work really hard to do things to, eat healthy and sleep well and have those social connections and work on their relationships, and sometimes it all feels a little bit difficult and overwhelming, and I think this work is one way to help bring more ease into it, to feel better. And sure, we still get life's challenges, but it gives us a bit of a path forward, I think. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes, perhaps one other thought about this, this goes into the whole world. If we feel, if every single person cares better for herself or for himself, and is, for example, more relaxed and peaceful in relationships, then this means more peace in the world. It
Right.
goes into the whole world. It's not only for myself or for my client. It affects the whole world.
So if someone wanted to train in logosynthesis and were interested in training with you, how do they get in touch with you? Or
It's the best way is my website, Ulrike
yeah.
Scheuermann.de. And I do the whole practitioner training, logosynthesis practitioner training in Berlin and online. As you mentioned this already, it's hybrid. It's called hybrid.
Yeah.
But I always do it in German. It's only for German-speaking people. But
Okay.
they can choose if they come here into my nice rooms in Berlin, or if they participate online.
Excellent. So I'll put that link in the comment section, and yeah, and people can also train through the Logosynthesis International Association website. We can put the information there for other training seminars and that as well. So, well, thank you so much, Ulrike. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Yes, me too. Thank you very much, Cathy.